Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Drew, and I'm the marketing manager at Kobiton. Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar, Deploy at the Speed of Digital. Today, we are joined by our friends at Simplicity, and we'll be talking about the importance of delivering at the speed of digital from inception to deployment. And just a reminder for everyone, for your privacy, you won't be able to see the other attendees, only yourself. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Etienne from Simplicity.
Hi everyone, it's Etienne from Simplicity. I'm the marketing manager and communication manager. I'm in charge of writing blogs, articles, organizing events, and creating and managing website for Simplicity. Today we'll be here for talk to you about the low-code platform and deployment at the speed of digital. We are with David Azoulay, the co-founder of Simplicity Software, and Frank Moyer, CTO of Kobiton. I will start, and then it will be David and Frank. Thank you. So to make a short presentation of Simplicity before the technical parts provided by David. Simplicity, we've been in business for nearly 10 years now. We are the vendor of a low-code platform called Simplicity, which makes it possible to create enterprise business application by modeling your business, visually created your application, and integrated third-party API. Everything is here to address your need from the simplest to the most complex one. By writing as few code as possible, that's the key idea of low-code. This type of developments allow application to be developed at a lower cost and faster than traditional development, but you will see the benefit of it in just a few minutes with David. And just to mention, we are in the quoted by the Forrester low-code study since several years now, and we had honorable mention at the last report from Gartner on HPA Pass, which is another kind of term for low-code platform. Frank, I'll let you introduce Kobiton.
Great, thank you, Etienne. First introduction to myself, I'm Frank Moyer. I'm CTO of Kobiton. I have been CEO of multiple startup companies that have exited, have been involved with technology for the past 25 years, and testing is part of my blood. Kobiton was started about 2 years ago, and it was an investment from the same company who's KMS, who started QA Symphony. Some of you may be familiar, it's the same company. QA Symphony is the builder of Qtest. So it's a company that's known testing for many years, and it was started because they saw the problems with the existing virtualization of mobile devices for testing. We allow testers and developers to test their mobile apps, both native apps, hybrid apps, and web apps through a set of 350 plus devices, both manually and in an automated fashion, and I'll be showing that later. And we have tight integrations with many of DevOps solutions like Jenkins that through our open API. So I look forward to seeing how you can learn from our webinar today, and I'll hand it back over. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Frank. So just to make a little focused on the importance of delivering at the speed of digital, it's not new that the phenomenon is accelerating. It's more and more important to deliver quickly, and this for several reasons. You have pressure from your competitors, the need for your new application, new usage emerging every day. The backlog of IT department is full, the part taken by legacy application is growing, and maintaining old application is even more expensive. Also, you must constantly find new ways to address your customers' needs, and the boundaries between B2B and B2C gets thinner. New market opportunities are opening up, and you need to be able to respond to them before other competitors do. And to finish, you need to be able to deploy on many channels, many terminals. It is necessary to test thoroughly because we know that it takes a certain time for Google and Apple to accept the version before they go live on the store. That's why we thought it was interesting to do this webinar between Simplicity and Kobiton to cover the full spectrum of deployment. If we focused a little bit on the usual IT bottlenecks, we have the tunnel effect. It's still present and still pollutes project. The client and the project manager do not always talk enough to each other, and as a consequence, it may be disappointing because at the end of the day, the actual business needs are not fully covered. Also, you have the kind of a need for scalability. It's necessary to quantify the needs well and to be able to increase the capacity according to those needs. It's still a problem in the IT bottlenecks. And the software delivery process are still often not ideally efficient to keep the pace with the market changes. If you go in development from scratch, you must often have to reinvent the wheel, start again, and again, and we know it's a waste of time, and ultimately it's a waste of money. And last but not least, you must test again. This is especially true when we know that the world around us is populated by different terminals with almost as many different configurations as the people who use it. So for that reason, it's for all this reason that many tools to overcome this problem are being developed, including low-code platforms. But what are low-code platforms for? Surprise? No, not really. It's not really a surprise. It's used mainly to fill the gaps we previously see, like reducing the IT backlog, reduce maintenance costs, increasing productivity to meet actual business needs, and to deploy faster. We know that today low-code platform is kind of a buzzword, but it's widely used to test concepts. But the robustness of these platforms make it now possible to go well beyond the proof of concept and to build real future-proof application for enterprise. It's really important to emphasize that. I let David to emphasize on simplicity and the different layer that the platform address. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is David Azoulay. I'm the co-CTO and founder of Simplicity, and I'll try to make you an introduction to the platform by doing a demonstration. So first of all, to summarize what Etienne said, the problem we wanted to address when we started Simplicity is that most of the time we now have front-end delivery processes that are very agile, that are based on DevOps, and thus they are very quick. They have very quick delivery. On the other hand, we have back-end systems which are still very traditional in their delivery mode. Because they need to be robust, they need to be industrial, and so on. It makes sense because it's where the actual business is processed. So the idea with Simplicity was to bring some agility on the back end. It was not to change the way the back end was built because we wanted to keep being robust and industrial, but we wanted to make it more agile to be able to deliver more quickly to the front ends. So to achieve that, we built a platform which is model-driven. It's a platform in which you will be configuring your business, your innovations, and so on, as business models within an engine. The engine will process your business models. Your business models are data, your business object, workflows, profiles, business rules, and so on. So all this is processed in the engine, and the first publication layer is an API. So the platform will publish everything that happens in the engine as APIs, which are completely generic and which doesn't require to write any line of code. On top of this, the platform provides a generic backend user interface, which also renders everything that is configured in the engine. So you don't need to write any code to benefit from this UI. And on top of the APIs, you can also build any kind of front end, either using the built-in features in Simplicity or using the popular UI frameworks such as React, Vue, or Angular, and so on. The platform itself can be deployed on any kind of platform as a service. It can be, of course, deployed on any kind of infrastructure as a service, cloud, public or private clouds. And it can even be deployed on traditional private infrastructures that we find most of the time in large account companies. And you can be a mix of all this. You can have your development environment on the platform as a service, whereas your production is on traditional on-premises server. So to build a typical business application with simplicity, the first thing you will be doing is to describe and to configure your business as models. You will be helped by graphical modeling tools and visual tools to build your application. And most of the time, you won't need to write any line of code. But sometimes you need to implement some advanced business rules or some tricky integration with third-party services. And then you are obliged to write some line of code. That's why we call Simplicity a low-code platform. It means that you don't have to write too much code, but only the code that really makes sense for your business. The things you configure in the platform will be automatically and dynamically rendered by generic components, as I told before, APIs at the first level, and then UI components, which are also extensible, which means that you can customize it if you want. Then the configuration can be easily deployed on scalable infrastructure. So if we speak of platform as a service, they are natively scalable. And as a consequence of all this, you don't have any tunnel effect because you're in a continuous implementation and integration being driven by the business needs. So what you address with Simplicity will always be at the same level as the actual business requirement. So to show you into more details how Simplicity works, I will use a very simple use case, which is an application for a pizza shop who will be managing pizza orders and delivery through a front-end UI. So the business model for this very simple business case will be configuring the engine. It will be exposed by APIs. Using the APIs, you will use the generic backend user for the owner of the pizza shop who will be processing the orders. And there is a custom front-end UI, which is dedicated to customers for them to place orders that will be processed on the other side. So first of all, I will show you the custom front-end. So the idea of the front-end is that it shows the pizza that are offered. You can display some additional information about the pizza. And you can place orders. So for instance, let's say I want to order this pizza. I enter my address. Let's have a simplified one to start with. And then I can add some additional comments and place the order. So when I do this, the order, in fact, is placed in the system, in the backend system. So the backend system is managed by the Simplicity generic UI. So I'm connected with my Google account on this. So on the home page of the backend application, I've got some statistics about the current orders. I've got also the list of the pending orders. I can administer the list of the pizzas that I propose on my website. So if I go to the details of the configuration, a pizza has a name, has a price, has some business rules also linked to the fields. Depending on the type, you have additional fields. And I can review the orders. The orders are going through a workflow, so they start in pending and validated and so on. So if I take a look at the orders, I see the order that has just been placed on the front end. I can validate this order. So it can be done using buttons like this. It can be done also using this one. You can have trays like this to change the state. So from delivered, I cannot go anywhere else. I have also some metrics about the orders. I can have also a geographical view of all the orders that have been placed. The one that I just placed is this one. So I can navigate on like this. I have also the history of the state transitions and so on. So this, for instance, if now I want to implement some additional business requirements. Let's say the first requirement I want to implement is the ability to say, okay, this pizza is not available today because I don't have the ingredients to be able to make it. So I need to add something. So to do this, I will switch to the designer view of Simplicity, in which I can display the business model. So I see the pizza object, and on the pizza object I can display the editor of the pizza form, in which I can say, okay, I want to add at this location, I want to add an additional field. This field will be a flag that says whether the pizza is available or not. So I need to give a name, a physical name, and a translation. So when I do this, you see that it adds an additional field. So if I close this and go to the pizza list, I see that there is a new field that has been added, available. So if, for instance, I want to make this pizza not available, I just change the value, and as the front end is well developed, it will be taken into account. So you see, for changing and enhancing your business configuration, it's very easy. So this is one way of doing the implementation. As I told you before, if I want to go further than what is just configurable in the platform, I can add some logic to the business object that will be developed. So in this case, it will be some code that I will add on the order to check whether the distance for the delivery is suitable. So you see that I just add some few lines of code associated to the order object. I implement what we call a pre-creation hook, which is a final check before creating a record. And in this, I'll just check the distance using Google Map services to check whether it's below a certain distance. So if I do this, and then if I display the front end, and let's say I want to order this pizza, but now I'm located in New York, then if I try to order, then I get an error message that says the delivery address is too far. So this rule is applied on the backend. So you've seen from this demonstration that it's very easy to change the configuration of your business object and to add additional behavior. So now I will hand over the presentation to Frank.
And with the speed at which development is done with these no-code platforms like Simplicity, the importance on testing is increases, especially in the world of mobile first. And it's really challenging to test on mobile devices these days. If you look at the distribution of mobile devices, and this is in the US, of the number of devices that a company needs to test against in order to get to 70% coverage of the market, you're looking at 28 different devices. When you get up to 80%, you're at 58, and to get to 95% coverage, you have to test against 359 devices, and that's just the device types themselves. It doesn't include the different versions of operating systems that also factor in. The other characteristic of mobile first are these uncontrollable conditions. You know, in the world of web, there is more control. While you do have the network complications in web, in the world of mobile, you've got a lot of things that are outside of the developer's control, including other apps that are running on the device, David just went through a demonstration of locale. You know, if you're, instead of typing in your location, it's detecting it automatically. What the status is of the battery and how that affects the application. Whether calls or SMS messages are coming in and how that affects the functioning of the application. All these are conditions that in a world of web are less impactful, but have a big difference or play a big role in the world of mobile first. So it's a huge challenge for developers and organizations that have mobile apps to make sure that when they're releasing an app using either a low-code platform like Simplicity or actually building a native app, that it's tested thoroughly before it goes out the door. Kobiton did a survey earlier this year of testers, and one of the key findings I thought was interesting was that how important testers believe testing on real devices. As you can see from the uncontrollable conditions and the number of devices that are out there that testers need to test against, it's important, it's critical that testers test on real devices before going out the door. You'll see that in the survey, 95% of testers think it's important. It's hard to understate the importance, and I've done quite a few speaking engagements, and people in the audience constantly talk about horror stories of where they've tested on simulators or emulators and been bitten when they've gone into production. We had a client in the Atlanta area that a few years ago had deployed their application to a large bank. They had deployed their application to production. They had tested on simulators and missed on specific devices. Users were not able to log in. So it's huge pain point if you get it wrong. And their reviews went from 4 down to about 2.2 during that period. Simultaneously, the expectations of users are high and increasing. 49% of users expect mobile apps to respond in less than 2 seconds. So, there is very little tolerance for slow or freezing apps. And I'll go through one of the products that we're releasing to the market shortly called Health Check, where we assess the performance. One of the things we assess is the performance of the application and look at the different components of an application, identifying the different parts that are responding in greater than 2 seconds. So you've got a lot of devices, high expectations on the user that it performs on their device type. So how do you deal with this? You've got on top of this, your application is constantly changing. The developers are, at the speed at which you can make changes with products like Simplicity, it's even more important that testing is in place. You can make changes, the deployments are happening daily, and testing needs to be happening at least daily. A lot of companies that we talk to, they barely have enough time to execute manual tests before things go out the door. And a lot of them are still stuck on manual tests because the speed at which the app is constantly changing. If they implement automation, the automation scripts are outdated the next day. And the requests are coming in from both development and support. So it's not just developers that are pushing changes, but it's also issues that they're finding in production are causing it to have other changes. But the good news is there are options. As I mentioned, if you've got a stable product or you have the time to invest in automation at every release, we integrate well with Jenkins and Appium, so you can write Appium scripts and execute those Appium scripts against 50 devices all in parallel. So The time from when we took one client who had 2 weeks of deployment and testing time down to 2 hours. They did that through implementing Jenkins automation on Appium and using Kobiton devices. They executed on about 50 devices, execute their test scripts in under 15 minutes. The second option is recorded playback. So if you don't have the time to invest in automation, but each release you don't want to go through manual test execution each time against all the devices, you can use a product. We've partnered with a company called Cobaton, where through the Cobaton interface you can record on a single device and then play that back across a multitude of devices. It's a lot faster than doing that. The third option, which is to test manually on each of those devices individually. And manual testing on multiple devices is still a good practice if you're looking at a dozen or so devices, and you've got to do it. You've got to do it fast each iteration. There might be some issues that you want to test and just see how it responds before going into something like record and playback. I mentioned earlier a product that we're launching this fall, which is called App Health Check, and we currently have an early version of it. What it allows you to do is execute a manual test against a single device. Kobiton captures each of the events and re-executes that same test across 50+ devices. And we're able to identify anomalies automatically during that execution across those 50 devices. We can identify crashes on specific device types where you've got performance issue anomalies on specific devices or in specific steps through your user flow. A common one we see, we've done about 100 health checks already against different apps, and about 95% of apps we've tested have some user interface issue that would reflect poorly on the brand. When you've got, the button doesn't show the text, or it's off the side of the screen because of how it's rendered. We also look at security vulnerabilities on the app, and we assess memory, CPU, battery, and network, these other device impacts as part of this health check. So we're looking at apps each release to give you a full gauge on how well your app is doing across a variety of facets. And I'll just quickly go through some of the examples of what this looks like. So here you can see an application called Spiffy that crashed. You can see in the logs, we'll actually pull out the part of the log where it crashes and be able to help your developers isolate where the crash is happening. I'll go through the demo later as well, where I'll show you the actual video that we're able to capture, and you'll be able to pinpoint where the crash is happening. We look at every part of the test execution and identify in the blue on a specific device what the performance is, and then in that gray area you can see the average across all different device types that we've tested against, the average plus or minus 1 standard deviation. So sort of the range, and you can see, for example, on this one, the ratings click here is taking about 15 seconds. On average, it takes about 11 seconds. But on this specific device, the Nexus 5, it's even slower than the average. So your users are waiting 15 seconds for that to respond. You can see also on the Spiffy app where you've got on the Nexus 5S, you've got this, the email password login are all adjusted to the right. The Explore as, you can't see the text below that. So just different rendering issues. And then security vulnerabilities. We do a full security scan. We don't do that ourselves. We partnered with a company called Apparay, who does that. We present those results to you. And then we look at the CPU on the device while the tests are executing. So you can see where the CPU on specific steps are above 50%. And we'll do this for CPU, battery, memory, and network. So I'm going to go into a brief demo, and I'm going to show you the Kobiton interface and demo the pizza app that has not only impressive, but has also made me very hungry. So we'll launch one of our devices. This list is all of the devices that are available both in our public cloud, and we also have private devices that you can set up. And one of the unique capabilities of Kobiton is that we provide the ability to connect your own devices to just your MacBook locally, as well as we offer up about 350 devices, public devices that you can launch. So I'm going to launch one of those public devices. I'm going to find the One Plus, and I'm going to launch this device. So it's very quick. If you look at some of the competitors that have device farms, this startup process takes about 2 minutes. With Kobiton, it takes about 10 to 15 seconds. So right there, this is a real device. Okay, I have an interface through my browser to a real device. I've got the ability to, on the right-hand side, pinch and zoom, rotate the screen. I can override the device location, change the time zone, and go back to the home screen, go back. So there's, it's like having a device in hand. So I'm going to launch the browser. I'm going to pull in the pizza app. And here I'm going to just go through a quick test. So this is a manual test. I may have also scripted this through Appium, but here you can see the beef pizza, the margarita pizza, the pepperoni pizza. I can launch it. It's rendering well, so I want it delivered to me. And I'll show you the outcome at the output of running this test. Fields required, address. So I'll go ahead and exit this test because I wanted to test whether or not the address validation was working. So I exit out of here, and I'm brought back to my home screen where I can see all of the sessions that were executed. And you can see this one, the One Plus, is the one I just finished. When I go into that, I can see all of the actions that I performed. So they're very step-by-step exactly what I was doing. Text I was entering, the drag, the mouse movements that were going on, which would have been my finger on the screen, the swipes. So I can manually inspect this and see that it was doing what I wanted. I can also script this via Appium, and I'll get the same results. I'll get the full set of screenshots. I can download these screenshots if I have an issue, or integrate that if there's an issue with something like Qtest or Jira. I also get a full video of what was executed. So all the steps, and I'll speed this up just to go through. This is when the app is loading. And then you can see me typing, pasting in the URL, and going through exactly the steps that I went through. So you can see what happened when the user or the automation script was executing this test. stop that. And then finally, you get a full view of the logs of what was happening when the test was executing. So you'll see for your developers to be able to pinpoint issues and where they were happening, you'll be able to go into this device log, and you can also, when you're running automation, you'll also see the Appium logs here as well. So that gives you an idea of how you can integrate Appium and Kobiton with something like Simplicite to deliver, not just deliver rapidly, but also test very, very rapidly.
All right, thank you, Frank. And also thank you to Etienne and David. So at this time, we'll go ahead and begin the Q&A portion of the webinar. Looks like we've already got a few questions in the queue, but go ahead and feel free to submit some more as we move along. Question number one appears to be for the guys over at Simplicite, and it says, if we have standardized on AWS, will Simplicite be able to be deployed on that?
Tu m'entends pas? Yeah. Hello, this is David. I will answer this. So as I said during the presentation, Simplicite is very flexible in terms of deployment. It has been deployed on a wide range of infrastructures, including several products at AWS. So for instance, it can be deployed on traditional EC2 virtual servers, but also on containers and elastic beanstalk containers in particular. So if you do this, you benefit from the fact that the database is a database as a service. So you have additional services around the storage, and you have additional services in terms of scalability, because the platform provides a lot of services around this.
Awesome, thank you, David. Looks like question number two is going to be for Frank. What if we already own our own devices?
Sure, well, we have a lot of flexibility there, unlike a lot of the offerings in the market. With those devices, you can either plug those devices into your an on-premise cloud. We'll set up a on-premise configuration for you where you can plug those devices in. Those will appear, and if you've got offices in 3 different locations, one of the unique characteristics of Kobiton is you can plug those set of devices in those 3 separate locations, and people in one location, San Francisco, can have access to the devices that are in Madrid. Very unique part of Kobiton's offering is that you've got visibility through your organization, even in a distributed environment. The other option is if you don't want to mess with managing devices. A lot of companies just, it's a pain in the butt to manage the devices. So but you've already made the investment. If you ship those devices to us, we can host those in our data center in a private cloud instance that those devices are dedicated to you, and we will maintain them. We'll be your remote hands. We'll do upgrades and make sure that they're secure. A lot less maintenance on your part. And then in parallel to that, you can also use our public cloud with those devices. So if you have 5 devices that cover 50% of the market, but you want to get up to 80%, you can complement those private devices with our public cloud to get you to that 80%.
Awesome, thank you, Frank. And it looks like the last question we have is, again, for Frank and the guys at Kobiton. What are some of the best practices around combining low code and test automation to reduce the number of repetitive tasks?
Yeah, so with a low code environment, it's critical that you implement automation or record and playback. So when you going through David's demonstration, being able to capture the change that was made, manually record that and play that back across a multitude of devices to make sure that it renders correctly. And then leverage things like, health check, where, you may not know that the change you made has an impact on performance that slows one of your pages rendering from a second to 10 seconds because it's doing a database scan. And do a quick health check across your application to make sure that you haven't broken something that was previously working well.
Great, thanks, Frank. And it looks like that's it for the questions, everyone. Just want to, again, thank everyone for joining, and a special thanks to the team at Simplicite for helping us put this webinar on. The recording will be available on the Kobiton YouTube platform in about a week or so, so do check back for that, and we will definitely also follow up with an email including the webinar as well. And with that, again, thank you, everyone, and have a great day.